Hello ladies and gentlemen and movie lovers of all kind, and welcome back to the channel. As always, I am your host, Brett Murphy, and for today's video, I have a brand new ranking for you all, and it's a fun one, folks, because I am going to be ranking all 9 of the Rocky/Creed final fights. So at this point, I have already ranked the 3 Creed movies by themselves and the 9 Rocky/Creed movies in celebration of the release of Creed 3. But I thought to myself that these movies are so iconic, so well known, and so beloved that I had to do one last video, and what better way to go about it than by talking about the amazing final fights. And that, of course, is what I will be ranking today. Before I hop into the actual ranking itself, I just wanted to let you all know that I have an entire playlist dedicated to all of my ranking videos. There is already well over 100 videos on that playlist, so if rankings are your thing, then be sure to check that out, and I guarantee you'll find something you like. And so without further ado, let's hop right into things. Number 9, Rocky 5. I mean, it ends in a street fight, and not only does it end in a street fight, but the street fight is just as over the top and absurd as every other fight in this franchise. These guys are bare knuckling it, no mouth guards, no nothing, and they go the freaking distance just battering each other with a crowd circling around them. It really just sort of does become too insane to believe, which is saying something when it comes to this franchise. Number 8, Rocky. Look, thematically, this fight really could be all the way up at the top. It is the greatest underdog story ever told. But when it comes to pure entertainment and just sitting there watching the fight, it lacks in so many areas. The choreography is not all that great. This was back before they were putting sound effects over the fake punches, so you can never tell when they're missing a punch or when they're landing a punch or when it's being parried or hitting the gloves or anything. It just doesn't work in a lot of ways and hasn't aged all that well if you ask me. Number 7, Creed 3. So director Michael B. Jordan took it upon himself to address this before the movie even released. And that is the fact that these fight scenes are heavily inspired by anime, and that really does show. And I think in a lot of respects, it works because these fights can be extremely satisfying, extremely electrifying, very, again, up close, personal, and hard hitting because you're seeing the muscles and the ripples and everything and the sweat pouring off them and blood, unlike ever before because of Jordan's direction. It really does engage you, but there are some instances where it is taken just a step too far, particularly in that final fight, and if you've seen this movie, then you know exactly what I'm talking about, and that pulled me right out of the experience. Now, I get what they were going for. We're supposed to be seeing what these guys are seeing, what they're feeling, and again, thematically, it does make sense because this is easily the most personal fight of Creed's career. You could make the argument for the Drago fight, but this fight stems directly from his own personal life in his past catching up to him, so I would argue that this is the most personal fight of his career, and for all those reasons, I love it. I mean, Jonathan Majors, not only is he a wonderful actor, but he is a terrifying physical presence. So in a lot of ways, this final fight does work, but it's just because we get pulled out of it and shown this different perspective for such a long period, basically the majority of the fight. It did pull me out of it more than I was hoping for. Number 6, Rocky Balboa. Now this one really does hurt me to put so low, but it's a mix of a few things. So it does definitely still have that over-the-top nature that all of us have come to know and love from the Rocky movies, but it splices it with more real-world boxing because a lot of the hits are real in this movie, and that is why I love it so much, and that is why it is above the 3 that came before it. But it's a mix of the fact that the villain is not all that compelling, so the stakes really just come from this being Rocky's swan song, his absolute 100% final fight. It's an exhibition match, so really in terms of the story, like the villain, and again it being an exhibition match and stuff, it doesn't really hold too much weight, but for Rocky's own personal story, after losing Adrian, everything that Paulie's going through, his strained relationship with his son, his inability to let go of the fighter that is still in him, all of that stuff is magnificent. And again, real punches were thrown in this movie. Stallone did actually take a real world hard-hitting KO punch. So there's things that I love about this fight and things that I think could have used a bit more tidying up, but nevertheless, this one doesn't often get the credit that it deserves, and I really feel so bad for putting it so low, but all the rest are just so damn good. Number 5, Creed. This one too hurts me to put oh so low, and what it really comes down to again is a common theme throughout many of these movies is the lack of a compelling villain. So they absolutely have the stakes. This is the villain's final fight before going to prison for who knows how long. He has been outed as a Creed. The title is indeed on the line. They are fighting in someone else's home territory, so all of that stuff is great, but it's just the fact that we have such a forgettable and uninteresting villain, because again, all of the weight is put on this Rocky and Adonis relationship. Now the fighting itself is freaking phenomenal. This looks like a real boxing match in a lot of ways. There is blocking, there is parrying, there is jabs, everything that a real boxing match would have. Of course, it's dramatized a little bit, but also I have to commend Michael B. Jordan for carrying the torch forward in the right way by volunteering to take a real knockout punch from a real world boxer so that they could film it and have it in the movie, and it looks awesome. So in a lot of ways, this fight could have ended up at the very top, but in some other ways, in my own nitpicky mind, it kind of just goes down a little bit lower because of the reasons I just mentioned. Number 4, Rocky 3. Now this is the start of the fights that were insanely hard to rank because all of them do everything right in my book. Yes, the Rocky fights are way more over the top than the Creed fights for the most part, but what it comes down to with this one is everything surrounding the fight and then the fight itself. Clubber Lang comes up onto the scene, calls Rocky out, basically ends up killing Mickey and then decimates Rocky in the ring, puts him to his lowest point, forces him to form a friendship and an unbreakable bond with Apollo Creed, and then he comes back for that final fight, which is all sorts of glorious. And without a doubt, in my humble opinion, Clubber Lang is the most vicious, merciless, relentless, animalistic, and savage opponent that Rocky has ever faced. This guy looks like he was born and bred to bring pain, and that's what he does.
Prediction? Yes, prediction. Pain.
He is such an absolute beast in that ring, and I love the fight scene, and I love everything that Mr. T brings to Clubber Lang and everything that Clubber Lang then brings into the ring for this final fight. Number 3, Creed 2. So yes, I did say earlier that Creed 3 is arguably Adonis's most personal fight yet, and I still stand by that, but that doesn't mean that this one isn't a close second or tied for the first. He is fighting the son of the man that killed his father. And again, it also takes a lot of beats from the just previously mentioned Rocky 3. He takes this fight on a whim because this guy is just an absolute Greek god. I mean, he is KOing people with ease, he is sculpted like a statue, and he hits like a freight train. And Rocky refuses to train Adonis, and he brings up that line that I love so much, that Ivan Drago broke things in him that have never been fixed. Adonis takes the fight anyway and just gets butchered, and it puts such a strain on his and Rocky's relationship, and I love those elements, and when we finally get to the final fight, it feels all kinds of epic. It is arguably the most cinematic fight of the entire franchise, all 9 movies. This one is so good because it is a back and forth, it is a David versus Goliath fight just like Rocky 4, and what really brings it home is the fact that Adonis gets hurt again in the ribs, he's fighting with just one hand, and then Ivan Drago throws in the towel, which is something that constantly gets harkened back to because Rocky's one of his biggest regrets in his entire life is not saving Apollo, not listening to him and throwing in that towel, which would have saved his life. And then that also mends the relationship between Ivan and Victor, and all of it just works for me so damn well. Number 2, Rocky 2. So if you watched my ranking of all of the Rocky and Creed movies, which I do highly recommend you do, yes, Rocky 2 was a bit lower than I would have liked it to be, because I did address in that ranking that there are things in Rocky 2 that I actually like better than the original. So not every story beat is as solid, but in my mind, the fight makes so much more sense. The champ is brought into question, his victory is under severe scrutiny, he brings in this nobody just because of his name, the Italian Stallion, and he almost was beat, and in the minds of many, he was beat. So this final fight makes so much more sense in my opinion, and the fighting is way better than it is in the first movie. You feel the punches, you feel the desperation, you feel the need to fight, you feel the heart, you feel the pulse-pounding nature of this fight and how much is riding on it. The stakes are through the stratosphere for Apollo Creed. Again, he is getting so much hate for that first fight, and then he goes and loses this fight in spectacular fashion with those iconic shots of them both falling and Rocky just managing to get up at the last second. This one does everything right story-wise, it does everything right with the movie's themes, and they improved on the boxing from the first movie tenfold. Number 1, Rocky 4. Now, I know I said with Creed 2, that was very much so a David versus Goliath story, but if you want to talk about the David versus Goliath story, you're looking at it right here with this final fight between Rocky and Ivan Drago. This movie does everything in its power to make this guy seem like a genetically modified superhuman. We're seeing him training with all this high-tech equipment with sensors and radars and scientists writing down notes. He's punching that pressure pad to see the power of his punches, and they're saying anything this guy hits is basically gonna just explode and die on impact. He straight up murders Apollo Creed in that first fight. It does everything to make us believe that this man is going to rip Rocky's head off. It is set in the Soviet Union in the heart of the Cold War. Again, going back to Rocky needing to take this fight because of the death of Apollo. Everything is set up perfectly to lead into this unforgettable and iconic final fight. Yes, it does go a little bit over the top and becomes insanely absurd because it basically makes both of these guys superheroes. Like I said, everything to do with the training with Ivan Drago, and then they even say during the fight that Rocky's like made of iron. These guys don't block anything, they're throwing haymakers the entire fight. It makes no sense, but how come then we love every single second of it? Because I know I do, and I know that you do too. This final fight, it is epic, it is emotional, it is crazy, wild, over the top bananas, but in all the possible right ways. Again, everything in the story, everything thematically, everything is built up superbly, and that final fight is executed expertly well, giving us arguably the most iconic and memorable fight in sports movie history. And as an extra cherry on top, basically Rocky ended up ending the Cold War here.
If I can change, and you can change, everybody can change.
So that is all for today's video, folks. Be sure to let me know down in the comments if you agree or disagree with my ranking. While you're at it, don't forget to let me know how you would rank all 9 of the final fights in the Rocky/Creed franchise. If you're a movie lover whatsoever, then my channel is the place to be for you. Be it rankings like this one, top 10 videos, versus videos, or tier videos, I have it all and so much more, with a backlog of well over 700 videos already on the channel for you to enjoy, with more coming each and every week and brand new shorts every single day. So if you enjoyed this particular video, then be sure to hit that thumbs up button. And if any of that sounds like it's right for you and you want to see more from me, then smash that subscribe button right now. While you're at it, don't forget to ring that little bell icon. That way you can be notified about all of my latest uploads. And as always, stay safe. Thank you so much for watching, and that's a wrap. Hey you, yeah you, if you made it this far, just know I appreciate you, and while you're here, consider hitting that subscribe button.